Hey guys, tonight we curtsy our way into a life that looks glamorous on the tapestry and feels like a slow-motion trap in real life, being a princess in Tudor England. Forget the flowing gowns, the swooning suitors, and the tiny dogs napping on velvet cushions. The truth is, you were less a beloved daughter and more a very expensive bargaining chip with a pulse, poured into a dress that could double as scaffolding, painted with makeup that was quietly poisoning you, and watched by roughly 40 people at all times, including while you slept. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and if you would rather drift off with your eyes closed, the channel is now on Spotify too, so you can find us there through the link in the description. And for anyone who wants a little more to sleep to, there is also a membership that unlocks a full 8 hours of calm, ad-free video, enough to carry you gently through the entire night without a single interruption, all waiting for you through the link below if that sounds like your idea of a perfect night's rest. Now dim the lights, switch on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let me ask you a few things first. Ever wondered whether a princess ever got to pick her own husband, or even meet him before the wedding? Did royal teeth really rot from all that sugar? Could you smile politely at a foreign ambassador while a lead-based face cream slowly ate your skin? Would you survive a childhood raised entirely by strangers, a wardrobe that required a support staff, and a father who might legally declare you a bastard before lunch? And could you keep your head, both figuratively and quite literally, in a court where one wrong sentence could send you to the tower? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1536. You are a princess. You owe nothing, control less, and somewhere in Europe a man twice your age is being measured for a wedding you have not agreed to. Sleep well. Let's start at the very beginning, with the joyous occasion of your birth, which was joyous for approximately no one. As a Tudor princess, your first act on this earth was to be the wrong gender. The entire kingdom had been praying, fasting and lighting candles for a son, a strapping male heir to carry the dynasty forward, and instead they got you. The midwives announce it in a hushed tone usually reserved for delivering bad harvest news. Your father musters a smile that does not reach his eyes. Somewhere a herald is quietly told to stand down. You're minutes old, and you have already let everyone down. Understand that this is not personal exactly, which somehow makes it worse. A king does not need a daughter. A daughter cannot inherit smoothly, cannot lead armies without eyebrows being raised, cannot carry the family name forward. What a king needs is a boy, ideally several, in case the first few do not survive, which back then was a genuine and constant concern. You, unfortunately, are a girl, which in the cold arithmetic of dynastic survival makes you a placeholder at best and a diplomatic tool at worst. Imagine being born and immediately filed under miscellaneous. The celebrations that follow your arrival are technically celebrations. There are bells, there are announcements, there is the appropriate pageantry, because a royal birth demands ceremony regardless of the plumbing involved. But the joy is measured, restrained, the polite applause of a room that was hoping for something else. Compare this to the absolute fireworks that would have greeted a son, and you begin to sense the gap. It is the difference between winning the lottery and finding a coupon. Both are technically good news. Only one of them changes your father's entire mood for the year. Your mother, meanwhile, is under a pressure you can scarcely imagine. Her value in this marriage is measured largely by her ability to produce male heirs, and she has just, through no fault of her own, produced you. If this becomes a pattern, if the sons simply refuse to arrive, her entire position grows shaky. Queens have been set aside for this. So while she may love you dearly, and many did, she is also acutely aware that you represent a job not yet finished. No pressure, just the stability of the realm and her own future resting quietly on her next pregnancy. The wider court, of course, takes note. Ambassadors dispatch letters home describing your arrival with the enthusiasm of men reporting on the weather. Foreign powers file the information away, recalculating alliances and marriage prospects. Everyone is already thinking about what you might be worth later, which is a lovely thing to be doing about someone who is currently the size of a loaf of bread and cannot yet focus her eyes. And here is the truly Tudor twist. Your disappointing gender is not a fixed sentence. If a brother arrives later, you slide even further down the ladder of importance, quietly outranked by an infant who did nothing but be born correctly. If no brother arrives at all, you may suddenly become extraordinarily important, the last hope of a dynasty that spent your entire childhood mildly disappointed in you. Your value can swing wildly based on the reproductive luck of your parents, none of which you control. So welcome to the world, little princess. You have arrived to muted applause, a nervous mother, and a father already wondering when the real heir shows up. You've been on this earth for mere minutes, and already your worth is a matter of ongoing negotiation. It is, frankly, a rough opening act, and things are about to get more crowded. Now that you have been born and gently forgiven for existing, you might expect to be cradled lovingly in your mother's arms. Adorable. As a royal infant, you're handed almost immediately to a small army of people who are not your parents. There is a wet nurse to feed you, a dry nurse to hold you, rockers to rock your cradle in shifts, and a governess to oversee the entire operation. Your mother, the Queen, has more pressing duties, like recovering and immediately trying for a boy. You will grow up in a separate household entirely, sometimes in a different castle, raised by staff who could be dismissed at any moment. The wet nurse is a particularly important figure, and also a peculiar one. She's a woman selected to breastfeed you because it is considered beneath a queen to do so herself, and because it conveniently allows your mother to become pregnant again sooner. This woman's diet, temperament, and moral character are all scrutinized on the theory that these qualities pass to you through her milk, which tells you everything about the medical understanding of the age. She may become one of the most consistent presences of your early life, a stranger hired to nourish a princess she must always treat with deference. Your nursery is not a cozy corner of your parents' quarters, but a whole separate establishment, staffed and organized like a miniature royal court, because it essentially is one. There are officials to manage it, servants to clean it, and a governess in charge of it all who wields real authority over your daily existence. This household may be located miles away from your parents, in a residence chosen for its clean air and distance from the diseases that swept through crowded palaces. You're being kept safe, which in practice means being kept elsewhere. The logic behind all this is not cruelty, at least not intentionally. Infant mortality is horrifyingly high, and a royal child is a precious, fragile investment. Keeping you in a controlled, carefully managed environment, away from the filth and plague of the main court, genuinely improves your odds of survival. It is protective. It is sensible. It also means you may see your actual parents only occasionally, on formal visits, arriving like distinguished guests to inspect how their expensive little asset is developing. So your earliest bonds form not with your mother and father, but with your nurses, your rockers, your governess. These are the faces you know, the hands that soothe you, the voices you recognize. And yet even these attachments are precarious, because staff can be replaced, reassigned, or dismissed for reasons that have nothing to do with you. The people you love most in your tiny world may simply vanish one day, swapped out by administrative decision, leaving you to bond with whoever arrives next. It is attachment as a rotating schedule. Consider what this does to a child. You grow up surrounded by people whose fundamental relationship to you is professional. They are kind, perhaps, even genuinely fond of you, but they are also employees, and you learn very early that affection and duty are tangled together in ways that are difficult to separate. The warmth you receive comes wrapped in obligation. It is a strange foundation on which to build a sense of who loves you and why. By the time you're old enough to understand your parents are your parents, the relationship is largely ceremonial. You honor them, you obey them, you are presented to them. But the daily intimacy of childhood, the ordinary closeness, belongs to a household of hired strangers. You were raised with great care and enormous expense by people paid to raise you. And somehow, through all of it, you are rarely truly alone, which brings us to your mornings. Let's talk about mornings, because yours do not begin with peace, quiet, or a single second of solitude. You wake in a grand bed in a grand chamber, and the first thing you see is people. Ladies of the bedchamber have already been up for hours. Someone is stoking the fire, someone is airing your linens, someone is standing by simply because standing near you is their entire job. Privacy, that lovely modern luxury, does not exist for you. You did not sleep alone, you will not dress alone, and you will not so much as sneeze without 3 noble women noting it with quiet interest. Start with the sleeping itself, which is not the private affair you might imagine. It was common for a lady of high rank to share her bedchamber, and sometimes even her bed, with attendants. These women slept nearby to serve you, to protect you, and frankly to keep an eye on you. So the very first thing you experience upon waking is the awareness that other people are present, awake and watching, having quite possibly listened to you snore all night. There is no groggy private moment to gather yourself. You open your eyes and the workday of your household has already begun around you. The chamber itself is a busy place from the earliest hours. Fires must be lit before you wake, because a princess should not be cold, and managing that fire is someone's specific responsibility. Fresh linens, warmed water, aired garments, all of it is prepared by hands that are not yours while you're expected to lie there and receive the service. It is a strange sort of luxury, being unable to do anything for yourself because doing it yourself would be improper and would also put someone out of a job. Now consider the ladies themselves, the noble women who attend you. These are not maids in the scullery sense. Many are from prominent families, placed in your service as an honour and an opportunity, and their proximity to you is the entire point of their being there. They dress you, they accompany you, they hand you things you could easily reach yourself. Being close to you is a position of prestige, which means your bedchamber in the morning is genuinely crowded with high-status women whose great privilege is watching you wake up. The complete absence of solitude is difficult to overstate. In the modern world, we take for granted the ordinary right to close a door and be unobserved for a while. You have no such right. Your standing, your safety, and the smooth running of your household all depend on being constantly attended, which means constantly accompanied, which means constantly seen. Even in the rare moments you might crave to be alone, being alone would itself be remarkable, noted, discussed. A princess wandering off unattended is a minor scandal. There is also a quiet surveillance woven into all this attendance. The people around you are not merely serving you, they are observing you, and much of what they observe travels. Your moods, your words, your health, your habits are all information, and information is valuable in a court. So your morning is watched not only for the practical purpose of dressing you, but for the political purpose of knowing you. You're the most closely monitored person in the room, every single day, before you have even had breakfast. So you rise, surrounded, into a day that was arranged before you woke, tended by people whose job is to be near you. You will not have a private thought expressed aloud, a clumsy, unobserved gesture, or a single moment off stage. And now that you're awake and thoroughly witnessed, the elaborate ordeal of putting clothes on your body can finally begin. Now that you're awake and thoroughly observed, it is time to get dressed, which for a Tudor princess is less a task and more a full construction project requiring a crew. You cannot dress yourself, not because you are lazy, but because the outfit is physically impossible to assemble alone. There is a smock, then a pair of bodies stiffened with wood or whalebone, then a farthingale to cage out your skirts, then a kirtle, then a gown, then sleeves that are pinned on separately like detachable furniture. By the time they finish lacing you in, you've been standing with your arms out for the better part of an hour, and you can no longer fully bend at the waist. Let's begin at the bottom layer, the smock, which is the one genuinely simple garment in this entire architectural undertaking. It is a linen shift worn against the skin, and it is the closest thing you have to comfortable clothing. Enjoy it while it lasts, because everything that follows is designed less for comfort and more for shaping your body into the fashionable silhouette of the day, which is to say a rigid, geometric, faintly upholstered version of a human being. Next comes the pair of bodies, an early form of the corset, stiffened with strips of wood or whalebone to flatten and mould your torso into a smooth, unyielding cone. This is not a suggestion of structure, but an enforcement of it. Once laced, you sit up straight because you have no other option. Slouching is now physically prohibited by your own clothing. It is posture as a garment, and it holds you at rigid attention whether you like it or not, all day without a break. Then the farthingale, a framework of hoops that hold your skirts out from your body in the wide, imposing shape fashion demands. Picture wearing a small cage around your hips over which fabric is then draped. Sitting down becomes a calculated maneuver. Passing through doorways requires awareness. The sheer physical footprint of your lower half expands dramatically, meaning you now occupy considerably more space than nature intended, and must navigate the world accordingly, like a very well-dressed piece of furniture on the move. Over all this go the kirtle and the gown, layers of rich fabric that add weight, warmth and grandeur in roughly equal measure, and then, gloriously, the sleeves, which are frequently separate items pinned or tied onto the gown rather than sewn in. This means your arms are dressed almost independently of the rest of you, attached like accessories, and if a sleeve comes loose you have a small wardrobe emergency mid-event. It is fashion assembled in modular pieces, held together by pins, prayers, and the steady hands of your attendants. The whole process takes a very long time and requires multiple people, because there is no way to lace, pin, and arrange all of this from the inside. You are, in a very real sense, being dressed the way one might dress a mannequin, standing more or less still while others work around you. It is intimate, it is tedious, and it is entirely dependent on the labour of others. The idea of quickly throwing something on and heading out the door is not merely impossible, it is unthinkable. And once you are finally fully assembled, you are magnificent, immovable, and slightly out of breath. You cannot bend easily, cannot rush, cannot dress or undress without help, cannot even fully lower your arms for a moment during the pinning. You're a walking display of wealth and status, which is exactly the point. Your body has been transformed into a statement. Now that the statement is dressed, it is time to paint the statement's face. With your body successfully upholstered, we now turn to your face, which fashion demands be as pale as a freshly bleached bed sheet. To achieve this coveted deathly glow, they apply ceruse, a lovely paste made of white lead and vinegar. It goes on smooth, it looks fashionably ghostly, and it is slowly poisoning you with every application. Over time it damages your skin, which of course requires more ceruse to cover the damage, a beauty routine that works exactly like quicksand. Add a bit of red for the lips and cheeks, and congratulations, you are now radiant, on trend, and gently absorbing heavy metals through your pores. Let's understand why pale is the goal in the first place. A fair, unblemished complexion signals that you do not labour outdoors like a common field worker sweating under the sun. Paleness is the visible proof of a life of leisure and high status, so the whiter your face, the more clearly you announce that you are far too important to have ever done an honest day's work outside. It is a flex, essentially, written in lead across your cheeks. The cirrus itself is prized because it does the job beautifully. It creates a smooth, even luminous surface, hiding blemishes, scars, and the ravages of illness under a flawless white mask. For a society without any of the skincare we take for granted, this is genuinely effective cosmetics. The small catch, the truly minor footnote, is that the primary ingredient is a toxic heavy metal that your skin absorbs, leading over time to skin damage, hair loss, and worse. But your face looks incredible in the meantime, so there is that. Here is the cruel loop at the heart of it. The lead damages the very skin you are trying to beautify, roughening and discolouring it. And the solution to damaged skin, in the logic of the day, is more ceruse, applied more thickly, to cover up the harm caused by the previous ceruse. You're treating the symptoms of the poison with more of the poison. It is a beauty regimen that quietly consumes the thing it is meant to enhance, and you reapply it faithfully because the alternative is appearing in public with a bare, imperfect face. The lips and cheeks receive their own treatments, reds and tints derived from various substances, some more questionable than others, to add a flush of life to your carefully deadened complexion. The irony is not subtle. You whiten your entire face to look pale and refined, then add colour back in specific spots to look alive again. You're essentially painting a healthy glow back onto a face you have just gone to great lengths to render corpse-like. Fashion, as ever, contains multitudes and a fair amount of nonsense. None of this is optional for someone in your position. As a princess, your appearance is a matter of public presentation and status, and looking the part is expected. So you sit still while this is applied day after day, participating fully in a practice that everyone considers the height of elegance, and no one recognises as slow harm. The finest ladies of the age all do the same, competing to be the palest, smoothest, most fashionably ghostly presence in the room. And so you go out into your day beautifully painted, admired, absolutely on trend, and being poisoned in slow, cosmetic installments. The heavy metal does its quiet work beneath the surface while you smile and receive compliments on your lovely complexion. It is a masterpiece of period beauty, ruinous and radiant in equal measure. Your face, at least, is perfect. Now we simply need to deal with the tremendous problem that is your hair. Now that your face is set, your hair must be dealt with, and by dealt with I mean hidden, tamed, and buried under an architectural marvel of fabric and wire. Depending on the year and the fashion, you might wear a gable hood, a rigid pointed contraption shaped like the roof of a house, or the slightly kinder French hood curving back over your head. Either way, your hair is scraped back, pinned into submission, and covered, because loose flowing hair is reserved for very specific occasions and unmarried purity displays. The headdress is heavy. It presses on your skull, and by evening you will feel it in your neck, your temples, and your soul. Let's start with the gable hood, which earns its name honestly, because it genuinely resembles the pointed gable of a roof framing your face. It is stiff, structured, and utterly unforgiving. A rigid triangular arch of fabric over wire that sits on your head like a small piece of building. It conceals essentially all of your hair, frames your painted face in severe geometric lines, and communicates modesty, piety, and status all at once. It also weighs on you like a helmet, because structurally that is more or less what it is. The French hood, by comparison, is the fashionable, slightly more forgiving cousin. It sits further back on the head, curves gently, and reveals a modest bit of hair at the front which by the standards of the day is practically scandalous. It is considered more elegant, more continental, and more flattering. But do not mistake more forgiving for comfortable. It is still a firm structure pinned securely to your head, still heavy, still something you wear rather than something you simply put on. Your neck notices it regardless of which style is currently in vogue. Underneath whichever hood you wear, your actual hair is subjected to its own ordeal. It is combed, parted, scraped tightly back, and pinned flat and out of sight. The point is control and concealment, not display. Loose, flowing hair carries specific meanings associated with youth, virginity, and particular ceremonial occasions like a coronation or a wedding. For ordinary daily life, a respectable woman's hair is bound up and hidden, so yours is wrestled into submission each morning and imprisoned beneath the headgear for the duration of the day. The weight is the part that wears on you most. These are not like little caps. They're constructed of stiffened fabric, wire, sometimes jewels and metal ornamentation, all balanced on your skull and anchored with pins that pull at your scalp. Wear that for hours, through meals and lessons and audiences and prayers, and by evening you feel it as a dull, spreading ache. Your neck stiffens from holding your head just so. Your temples throb where the structure presses. It is a low, constant tax on your comfort, paid in exchange for looking correct. And correct is truly the aim, because your headdress is not merely fashion, but a statement of your rank and virtue. The richness of the fabric, the quality of the ornamentation, the very style itself, all broadcast information about who you are and where you stand. To appear improperly covered, or with your hair carelessly loose, would be a lapse noticed and remarked upon. So you endure the weight and the ache, because being seen without the proper headdress is simply not something a princess does. By the end of the day, when you are finally, mercifully unpinned, the relief is enormous, the sudden lightness almost dizzying. Your scalp is tender, your neck is grateful, and the marks of the day's confinement linger. Then tomorrow it all goes back on, structure and pins and weight and all, because this is simply the price of a fashionable, respectable head. Your face is poisoned, your hair is imprisoned, and now, at last, we might address the deeply neglected subject of washing. Let's talk about hygiene, or rather the careful avoidance of it. You might assume that a princess, of all people, bathed regularly in rose-scented water like something out of a painting. In reality, full immersion bathing is viewed with deep suspicion, because many believe that hot water opens the pores and invites illness straight into the body. So instead of bathing, you are wiped down with linen cloths, doused in perfumes, and layered in scented powders to manage the situation diplomatically. Your fine clothes are aired rather than washed. The overall effect is a princess who looks immaculate, smells strongly of violets, and underneath it all is quietly having a rough time. The medical theory here is worth appreciating for its confident wrongness. It is widely believed that the body's pores are like little doors, and that hot water flings them open, allowing disease and corrupt vapours to rush inside and take hold. Since illness is genuinely everywhere and genuinely deadly, avoiding anything thought to invite it seems entirely reasonable. So a full hot bath is regarded not as refreshing self-care, but as a risky medical event, something to approach with caution rather than pleasure. In place of soaking, cleanliness is managed through the linen you wear against your skin. The smock, that simple underlayer, is understood to absorb the body's sweat and grime, and so changing your linen frequently is considered the proper and civilized way to stay clean. A fresh white smock signals cleanliness far more than a scrubbed body would. In this logic, you're clean because your linen is clean, and the linen is doing the work that we would now assign to soap and water. It is hygiene by laundry rather than by bathing. Then come the perfumes, applied with real enthusiasm and real purpose. Scented waters, fragrant oils and perfumed powders are used to mask body odour and to create a pleasant impression, because if you cannot easily wash away a smell, the next best thing is to bury it under a stronger, nicer one. Violets, roses and various herbal scents do the heavy lifting. You move through your day trailing fragrance, a walking bouquet arranged specifically to distract from what lies beneath the fine fabric and the perfume itself. Your face and hands do get attention, being the parts most on display, wiped and cleaned as needed. But the full body soak we consider basic is a rare and deliberate undertaking rather than a routine. When bathing does happen, it is an event requiring water to be heated and hauled, a tub to be prepared, and a good reason to justify the perceived risk. It is not something done casually of a morning. It is closer to a scheduled procedure than a habit. There is a certain irony in all of this, given how much effort goes into your appearance. You are painted, dressed in gorgeous fabrics, adorned and presented as the pinnacle of refinement, all while the underlying matter of washing is handled with cloths and cover-ups. The gap between how you look and how a modern nose would experience you is considerable. You are the height of elegance from the outside, and a more complicated situation up close, held together by fresh linen and a devoted commitment to violets. And here is the thing, you do not consider yourself dirty at all, and neither does anyone around you. By the standards of your world, the frequent changing of linen and the diligent use of perfumes and cloths is precisely what cleanliness looks like. Everyone operates by the same understanding, so no one is offended and no one thinks twice. You are, by the measure of your own age, a fastidiously clean and fragrant princess. Now let's ruin the illusion further by opening your mouth and examining your teeth. Now let's peek behind that polite royal smile, because it is hiding a catastrophe. Sugar has arrived in England, and it is wildly expensive, which naturally means the rich cannot get enough of it. As a princess, you eat sugared fruits, sugared cakes, and sugar shaped into little decorative sculptures for fun. You may even eat it as a supposed medicine. The predictable result is that your teeth begin to rot in your head at a truly impressive rate. Some fashionable folk even blacken their teeth on purpose to signal they are wealthy enough to afford the sugar that ruined them. Your grin, once bright, is now a status symbol of decay. Let's appreciate just how prized sugar is in your world. It is imported, costly, and therefore desirable in the way that only expensive things can be. To serve sugar in abundance is to display wealth, generosity and sophistication all at once. It appears at grand feasts in elaborate forms, moulded into shapes, spun into decorations, worked into fantastical edible centerpieces meant to impress your guests. Access to this much sugar is a privilege reserved for the very top of society, and you are firmly at the top. So you consume it constantly, in quantities that would alarm a modern dentist into early retirement. Sweet dishes, candied fruits, sugared spices, confections of every description flow through your diet because you can afford them and because indulging in them announces that you can. Even your medicines may be sweetened or sugar-based, on the cheerful assumption that something so pleasant and precious must surely be good for you. Sugar is not an occasional treat in your life. It is a regular, lavish, everyday presence. The consequences arrive right on schedule and take up residence in your mouth. Without any real understanding of dental hygiene as we know it, and a wash in sugar, your teeth decay. Cavities form, teeth darken, and the rot sets in with grim reliability. There is no toothpaste in the modern sense, no dentist to catch problems early, and no notion that the beloved sugar is the culprit. You simply eat what your status demands and watch, or rather feel, Your teeth pay the price over the years. Now here is the detail that captures the whole absurd spiral perfectly. Because decayed teeth become associated with the sugar only the wealthy can afford, blackened, rotting teeth actually become fashionable. A mouthful of decay signals that you are rich enough to have ruined it, and so some people reportedly go so far as to blacken their perfectly good teeth on purpose to fake the look. Tooth decay transforms from an unfortunate ailment into an aspirational status symbol. Your ruined smile is, in a sense, a luxury item. The pain, of course, does not care about fashion. Toothache in your world is a serious and recurring misery, and the treatments are crude. There is no gentle filling, no careful repair. The remedy for a badly rotten tooth is often simply to pull it out, an ordeal performed without anesthesia by someone whose qualifications may be generous to describe. So beneath the fashionable decay lies genuine throbbing agony, endured because there is little else to be done about it. So your royal smile, which ought to be one of your great assets, becomes instead a quiet testament to your privilege and your suffering all at once. You eat the finest, sweetest food available to any human in England, and your teeth crumble in gratitude. You may even style the damage as desirable. It is a perfect little parable of wealth in your age, where the very indulgences that mark you as important are also the ones quietly wrecking you. Speaking of indulgence, let's proceed to the rest of your remarkable teeth-destroying diet. It is time to eat, and unlike the peasants outside your walls, you will eat well, which comes with its own quiet consequences. Your table groans with roasted meats, game birds, fish, fine white bread and spiced wine, because vegetables are considered peasant food and are largely beneath you. Fresh fruit is treated with suspicion as a cause of illness. So you dine on a rich, heavy, meat-forward parade of dishes, morning to night, served on your knees by attendants, tasted first by others for poison. It is a feast that looks magnificent and leaves your body wondering when, if ever, it will encounter something green. Let's begin with the sheer dominance of meat on your table. Roasted, boiled, baked and stewed, the flesh of every available creature appears before you in abundance, from beef and mutton to an astonishing variety of birds, including some you might be surprised to find on a plate at all. Meat is the food of status, the centerpiece of any respectable meal, and the more of it and the greater its variety, the grander the display. Your diet is built around it day after day, in quantities that reflect your rank far more than your appetite. Fine white bread joins the meat as a marker of privilege, while poorer people eat coarse, dark loaves bulked out with whatever is cheap. You eat the palest, most refined bread available, made from carefully processed flour. The whiteness of your bread is itself a statement, a small daily reminder that you have access to the best. Add spiced wine and other rich drinks, flavoured with expensive imported spices, and your table becomes a showcase of everything money and rank can command. Now let's address the conspicuous absence of vegetables, which are viewed with a faint disdain. Greens, roots, and the humble produce of the garden are associated with the diet of the poor, who eat such things out of necessity. For someone of your standing to fill up on vegetables would be almost a step down, a failure to eat according to your station. So while a peasant munching turnips is unknowingly getting a fair bit of nutrition, you, dining on your magnificent meats, are elegantly avoiding it. Fresh fruit fares little better, regarded with medical suspicion as a possible cause of illness, particularly when raw. The prevailing wisdom holds that raw fruit can unbalance the body and bring on disease, so it is often cooked heavily, preserved in sugar, or avoided altogether. Between the disdain for vegetables and the wariness toward fresh fruit, your gloriously rich diet quietly omits many of the very things that would keep your body running smoothly. The results, over time, are not kind. The rituals surrounding your meals are as elaborate as the food itself. Dishes are presented with ceremony. Attendants serve you with deference, sometimes kneeling, and before anything reaches your lips, others may taste it first to guard against poison. Eating, for you, is not a simple act of nourishment, but a performance of status conducted under careful protocol. Even your daily bread arrives wrapped in ritual, a reminder at every meal of exactly who you are and how carefully you must be protected. So you eat like royalty, which is to say richly, heavily, and somewhat disastrously. The magnificent parade of meats and sweets and fine bread that marks your privilege also weighs on your health in ways no one quite connects to the food. You are surrounded by the best that the age can offer, and are, ironically, missing much of what a body actually needs. It is abundance without balance, splendor at the cost of nutrition. And as with everything in your life, even the simple act of eating comes bound up in rules, which we should examine next. Now that the food is in front of you, brace yourself, because eating it correctly is a minefield of etiquette. There are rules for how you sit, how you hold yourself, which fingers may touch which food, and the precise choreography of who is served before whom. You must not appear greedy, hurried, or, heaven forbid, hungry. Every gesture is watched and silently judged by a room full of people cataloguing your manners for later gossip. A fork is a novelty item you may not even have. So you eat delicately, gracefully, and largely with your fingers and a knife, while performing refinement like it is a competitive sport. Let's begin with the body itself, because how you hold yourself at the table matters enormously. You must sit upright, composed and controlled, your posture reflecting your breeding and your rank. Slumping, fidgeting, or leaning is unthinkable. This is made rather easier by the rigid clothing already holding you at attention, but the discipline is expected regardless. Your entire bearing must communicate that you are refined, restrained, and thoroughly in command of yourself, even in the simple act of reaching for a dish. Then there is the matter of your hands, and the surprisingly detailed rules governing them. In an age when the fork is a curious foreign novelty most people do not use, you eat largely with your fingers and a knife, which means the manner of using your fingers becomes a fine art. Certain fingers are used, others kept clean, food is taken neatly and never grabbed. To eat with your fingers gracefully, without mess or greed, requires genuine skill and constant attention. It is delicate, deliberate, and closely watched. The order of service is its own elaborate hierarchy. Who is served first, who receives the finest portions, who is offered which dish, all of it follows the strict ranking of the room. Precedence is everything, and the choreography of a formal meal maps the social order onto the dinner table with great precision. As a princess, you occupy an elevated place in this sequence, but you must also understand and respect it perfectly, because a misstep in precedence is a genuine social error, not a trivial oversight. Above all, you must never appear to actually want the food. Showing greed, eating quickly, or betraying real hunger would be deeply unrefined, a lapse into the appetites of common people. The ideal is to eat with detached elegance, as though nourishment were almost beside the point, and the true purpose of the meal were the graceful performance of dining. You take modest portions, you eat with restraint, and you project the serene impression that you could take or leave the whole affair, whatever your stomach might privately think. And you are watched throughout, constantly and thoroughly, by attendants, by companions, by anyone present. Your table manners are a matter of ongoing public assessment, and any slip, a clumsy gesture, a breach of etiquette, an unseemly display, will be noted and very likely discussed afterward. Meals are not private refuelings, but public exhibitions of your breeding and self-command. Every bite is, in a sense, evidence. entered into the court's endless quiet record of who behaves as they should. So dining, which ought to be one of life's simple pleasures, becomes for you a demanding performance requiring skill, discipline, and unrelenting composure. You navigate the fingers and the knife, the posture and the precedence, the careful projection of graceful indifference, all while a roomful of observers takes note. It is exhausting in its way, a test conducted 3 or more times a day. And having mastered the elaborate business of eating properly, you might hope for some relief in your studies, which, as it turns out, are their own relentless undertaking. Let's move to your education, which, to be fair, is one of the genuinely good parts of being a Tudor princess, and also relentless. Unlike most girls of the age, you're actually taught, and taught well. Latin, Greek, French, Italian, theology, music, needlework, and the endless art of courtly conduct. Your tutors are among the finest scholars available, and the expectations are enormous. You will translate texts, memorize scripture, and be paraded out to demonstrate your learning to visiting dignitaries like a very expensive performing miracle. It is an extraordinary education for the time, delivered with all the warmth of a military drill. Let's start by appreciating how genuinely rare this is. Most girls in your era receive little or no formal schooling, their education limited to household skills and perhaps some basic reading. You, by contrast, are given access to the leading minds of the day and a curriculum that would challenge many grown scholars. This is not because anyone particularly wants you to enjoy learning, but because a princess must be accomplished, cultured, and impressive, a credit to her house and a suitable ornament to a future court. Your mind is being furnished the way your wardrobe is stocked for display. The languages alone are formidable. Latin is essential, the language of scholarship, diplomacy, and the church. Greek marks you as truly learned. French and Italian are the tongues of the fashionable continental courts you may one day marry into. You're expected not merely to stumble through these, but to read, write, and converse with genuine fluency. Imagine the hours of drilling, conjugating, and translating required to reach that level in several languages at once, all while managing everything else your position demands of you. Theology and scripture occupy a central place, and not as gentle moral instruction. Religious knowledge is serious, weighty, and in your world, politically charged. You memorize passages, study doctrine, and are expected to hold your own in matters of faith, because a princess must be visibly, defensibly, pious. In a court where the official religion can shift and where the wrong belief can become dangerous, your theological education is both a spiritual foundation and a kind of armor, arming you to demonstrate correct devotion whenever it is required. Then come the softer accomplishments, though softer does not mean easier. Music, whether singing or playing an instrument, is expected of a refined lady, and you practice until you can perform gracefully. Needlework, that endless companion of noble women, is drilled into you as both a skill and a virtue. And woven through everything is the constant instruction in courtly conduct, how to speak, move, bow, and behave in every conceivable situation. Your education is not only academic but comprehensive, shaping the whole of you into a polished courtly product. Your tutors, learned and demanding, hold you to standards that leave little room for laziness or excuse. The expectations placed upon you are immense, and the pressure is real. You're not learning for your own quiet enrichment, but to meet the requirements of your station and to reflect well on those responsible for you. A princess who cannot perform her learning is a failure of investment, so the drilling is thorough and the tolerance for shortcomings is thin. It is a rigorous, disciplined regimen, warm as a stone floor, and perform your learning you must, because a well-educated princess is a diplomatic asset to be shown off. Visiting dignitaries and ambassadors may be treated to a demonstration of your accomplishments, your languages, your knowledge, your grace, evidence of your quality laid out for inspection. You become a kind of living exhibit of your family's sophistication. It is a remarkable education, genuinely, one most people of your time could never dream of, and it is also a duty, an expectation, and a performance. And speaking of performances demanded by your station, few are as constant or as watched as your religious devotion. Now let's talk about faith, which is not a private matter for you, but a very public, very mandatory, very scheduled obligation. Your day is threaded with prayer, chapel attendance, and religious observance, and your piety is not optional decoration. It is watched, recorded, and politically weaponized. In a Tudor court where the very religion of the country can change with the monarch's mood, praying the wrong way in the wrong language to the wrong saint could quietly mark you as dangerous. So you kneel, you observe, you demonstrate flawless devotion, and you learn very early that your soul is also a matter of state. Let's begin with the sheer rhythm of it. Your day is structured around religious observance, with set times for prayer and regular attendance at chapel, woven into your schedule as firmly as meals or lessons. Devotion is not something you fit in when you feel moved to it, but a fixed and recurring duty performed whether or not your heart is in it. You kneel at the appointed hours, you attend the appointed services, and the shape of your entire day bends around the expectation of visible, consistent piety. And visible is the operative word, because your faith is a public performance as much as a private conviction. People notice how devoutly you pray, how faithfully you attend, how correctly you observe. Your piety is part of your reputation, evidence of your virtue and fitness, and so you must be seen to be devout, not merely feel it quietly within. A princess whose religious observance appears lax or careless invites unwelcome comment, so you perform your devotion with care, aware that others are always watching how you worship. The stakes climb sharply when you consider the volatile religious landscape of your world. The official religion of the realm is not a settled, permanent thing, but something that can shift dramatically depending on who wears the crown and what they believe. Forms of worship that are correct and safe under one monarch can become suspect, even dangerous, under the next. This means the way you pray is not merely a spiritual choice but a political position, one that can align you with power or quietly place you at odds with it. So the details matter enormously, and they are fraught. Whether you pray in Latin or the vernacular, which practices you observe, which figures you honour, all of these can carry political weight far beyond their spiritual meaning. To worship in a manner that has fallen out of favour is to risk being seen as disloyal or subversive, regardless of your intentions. Your private devotions become a matter of public and political significance, scrutinized for signs of where your true allegiances lie in a divided and suspicious age. This places you in a genuinely precarious position, especially when the religious tides turn. You may have been raised in one form of faith only to find the ground shifting beneath you, the observances of your childhood suddenly recast as problematic. Navigating this requires care, discretion, and a constant awareness of the current climate. Your soul, which ought to be the most personal thing you possess, is instead entangled with the politics of the realm, monitored for conformity and read for meaning. So you observe your faith diligently, correctly, and visibly, threading your days with prayer and chapel, and demonstrating a devotion that is beyond reproach. You do this partly, one hopes, out of genuine belief, but also out of necessity, because in your world piety is safety, and the appearance of devotion is a shield. Your relationship with the divine is also inescapably a relationship with the state. It is one more arena in which you are watched and judged, and watching and judging as it happens is very much the specialty of the women who surround you day and night. Let's discuss your companions, the ladies who surround you day and night, and who are absolutely not your friends in any sense you would recognize. They dress you, entertain you, sleep near you, and follow you everywhere. But nearly every one of them has been placed there by an ambitious family, hoping to gain influence through proximity to you. They report your moods, your words, and your slips to interested parties. Genuine friendship is a dangerous luxury, because anyone close enough to comfort you is also close enough to betray you. You're never alone, and yet, in the way that matters most, you're entirely by yourself. Let's start with what these women actually do, because on the surface it looks like devoted companionship. They attend to your needs, help you dress, keep you company through the long hours, accompany you as you move about and share your chambers. They are present for nearly every moment of your waking life, and many of your sleeping ones. To an outside eye, you appear to be surrounded by attentive, loyal friends, a princess perpetually accompanied by a circle of affectionate ladies. The reality beneath is considerably colder. Consider how these women came to be at your side in the first place. A position attending a princess is a prize, eagerly sought by noble families who understand that proximity to you means proximity to power and influence. A daughter placed in your household is an investment, a foothold, a potential channel to royal favour. So the ladies around you are often there not because they chose you or you chose them, but because their families manoeuvred them into place. Their presence serves ambitions that have little to do with your happiness. This means that much of what they observe travels outward. Your moods, your careless remarks, your friendships, your health, your slips of temper or judgment, all of it is information, and information is currency in a court. A lady who can report useful details about you to her family or to some interested faction becomes valuable to them. So the women who know you most intimately are also, in many cases, quietly relaying what they learn. Your daily life is gently, continuously surveilled by the very people who help you into your gown each morning. The result is that genuine friendship becomes a perilous thing to indulge. To truly confide in someone, to let your guard down and speak freely, is to hand them something they could use, whether they mean to or not. The closer you allow someone, the more they know, and the more they know, the more dangerous they become should loyalties shift or pressures mount. Trust, that foundation of ordinary friendship, is a luxury you can scarcely afford, because the cost of misplacing it can be severe, and so you learn to hold yourself apart even while perpetually surrounded. You're courteous, warm perhaps, engaged in the pleasant surface of companionship, but you guard your true thoughts closely. You cannot fully relax, cannot speak entirely freely, cannot lean on these women the way one leans on a genuine friend. You perform intimacy while withholding the real thing, maintaining a careful distance beneath the appearance of closeness. It is a lonely way to live, all the lonelier for being so crowded. The deep irony of your existence is captured perfectly here. You are almost never physically alone, always attended, always accompanied, your solitude a rarity. And yet in the sense that matters most, the ability to trust, to confide, to be truly known and supported, you are profoundly isolated. The crowd around you is not the comfort it appears to be. So you fill the endless hours in company that is watchful rather than warm, and you fill them more often than not with the quiet, respectable, ever-present labour of the needle. Now that we've covered your suspicious companions, let's talk about how you fill the endless hours, and the answer, disappointingly, is often needlework. Embroidery is considered the ideal pursuit for a lady of your station, a display of patience, virtue, and refinement all stitched into a cushion nobody asked for. You will spend astonishing amounts of time hunched over fabric, threading tiny elegant patterns while ladies read aloud or play music nearby. It is calming, it is respectable, and it is used to fill a schedule with wholesome decorous activity so that you are never, under any circumstances, left with too much free time to think for yourself. Let's understand why the needle looms so large in your life. Needlework is regarded as the quintessential feminine accomplishment, a skill every well-bred woman should possess and display. It signals virtue because it keeps idle hands busy. It signals patience because it demands long, careful attention. It signals refinement because the finest work is genuinely intricate and beautiful. For a lady of your rank, skill with a needle is not optional but expected, a fundamental part of what it means to be an accomplished woman worthy of your station. So you sew, and you sew a great deal. The hours you spend bent over fabric, working thread into patterns, would astonish anyone accustomed to modern leisure. This is not the occasional pleasant hobby, but a major recurring occupation of your days, filling stretches of time that might otherwise hang empty. You produce cushions, hangings, decorative pieces, elaborate designs work stitch by painstaking stitch, and the sheer quantity of your output reflects just how much of your life is quietly given over to this respectable, repetitive task. The setting for all this stitching has its own gentle rhythm. As you work, your ladies gather round, and the time is filled with reading aloud, perhaps from devotional or improving texts, or with music played softly nearby. It is a picture of calm, cultured femininity, a group of women occupied with wholesome pursuits, the air filled with quiet voices and pleasant sound. There is a real serenity to it, a soothing and orderly quality, and on a good day it may even be genuinely agreeable, a peaceful island in a watchful world. But let's be honest about the deeper function of all this diligent stitching, which is control as much as accomplishment. Filling your hours with structured, decorous activity ensures that you are never left too long with nothing to do. Idle time, in the thinking of the age, is dangerous, an opening for restlessness, mischief, or worse, independent thought. A princess kept busy with virtuous needlework is a princess safely occupied, her attention channeled into something harmless and appropriate rather than left to wander into questions or discontents. There is something quietly telling in this. The endless embroidery is not merely about producing lovely objects, though it does that, but about shaping how you spend your inner life. By filling your days with acceptable, absorbing, undemanding work, those around you gently ensure that your energies flow into approved channels. Your mind, sharp and well-educated as it is given a great deal of thread to occupy it. The calm of the needle is also, in its way, a kind of containment, elegant and unremarkable. So you stitch, hour upon hour, producing beautiful work and embodying the patient virtue expected of you, surrounded by soft voices and music kept serenely and thoroughly occupied. It is a pursuit both genuinely pleasant and quietly purposeful, filling the time and steadying the days. Whether you find real solace in it or simply endure it, the needle is a constant companion of your confined existence. But not every hour is spent indoors bent over fabric, because on occasion, gloriously, you're permitted to go outside and chase things. Let's step outside for once, because your leisure is not entirely limited to poking cloth with a needle. Hunting and hawking are prized royal pursuits, and as a princess you're expected to ride, follow the chase and admire a well-flown falcon. On the surface this sounds like glorious freedom, wind in your hair, galloping across the estate. In practice you ride side-saddle in heavy layers, your outings are carefully arranged and attended, and even your recreation is a performance of grace and status. Still, for a brief shining hour you are moving, you're outdoors, and no one is fitting you into anything made of whalebone. Let's begin with the prestige of these pursuits, because hunting and hawking are not mere pastimes, but marks of high status. The chase is a noble tradition, an activity of kings and courtiers, and participation in it signals your rank and your fitness for elevated society. Hawking in particular, the art of flying trained birds of prey, is an aristocratic accomplishment surrounded by its own elaborate lore and etiquette. To ride out and take part in these pursuits is to partake in something quintessentially royal, and so it is expected of you as much as it is permitted. The riding itself offers a rare and genuine physical liberty. To be on horseback, moving across open ground, following the hunt through the estate, is about as free as your body is ever allowed to feel. After the confinement of stiff clothing, watchful chambers, and endless indoor hours, the sensation of motion and open air must be intoxicating. There is real pleasure here, the thrill of the horse beneath you, the drama of the chase, the beauty of a falcon climbing into the sky. For a while you are participating in something vivid and alive, but let's not overstate the freedom, because it comes carefully bounded. You ride side saddle, a manner of riding dictated by modesty and propriety, which limits your movement and control compared to how a man might ride. You remain dressed in your heavy layers, because a princess does not shed her finery or her dignity even for sport. And you are, as ever, attended, your outing arranged and accompanied by others whose presence ensures your safety and your proper conduct. Even at the gallop, you are not truly unsupervised. The whole affair, in fact, remains a performance of grace and status, even as it offers a taste of release. How you sit your horse, how you conduct yourself in the field, how you admire the sport, all of it reflects on you and is observed accordingly. You're expected to display the poise and refinement appropriate to your rank, to be elegant even in recreation. The hunt is an occasion to be seen behaving beautifully outdoors as much as it is an occasion to actually enjoy yourself. Leisure, for you, is rarely fully off duty, and yet, for all these qualifications, the value of these outings should not be dismissed. In a life so heavily hemmed in by walls, watches, and rigid routine, the chance to be outdoors, in motion, engaged in something exciting, is precious. The fresh air, the exercise, the change of scene, the sheer novelty of doing something active, all of it offers a genuine reprieve from the confinement that defines so much of your existence. For a brief, bright interval, the usual constraints loosen their grip even if they never fully let go. So you seize these hours gladly, riding out to follow the chase or watch a falcon stoop, tasting a freedom that is real if incomplete. It is one of the more genuinely enjoyable duties of your station, a pursuit that is expected of you, and that also happens to be a pleasure. When the ride ends, of course, you return to the layers and the watchers and the whalebone, but you carry the memory of open air with you. And now we must turn from the pleasant chase to the far weightier chase in which you are not the hunter, but the prize. Now we arrive at the true purpose of your entire existence, the thing every part of your upbringing has been quietly building toward, your marriage. From the moment of your birth, you have been a diplomatic asset, a living treaty to be negotiated with foreign kings and princes. Your betrothal might be arranged when you are a small child, promised to a boy you have never met in a country you have never seen. These arrangements are made, broken, and remade as alliances shift, meaning you may be engaged several times over to several different men, none of whom you chose, all before you are grown. Let's be clear-eyed about what you fundamentally are in the calculations of your world. You are, above all, a means of forging alliances between powers. A princess's marriage can seal a treaty, cement a friendship between realms, secure a border, or gain a valuable ally. Your hand in marriage is therefore a diplomatic instrument of real weight. something rulers negotiate over as they would any other matter of state. Everything about how you've been raised, educated, and presented has been oriented toward making you a fitting and valuable bride when the moment comes. The negotiations over your future often begin astonishingly early. It is entirely possible for your betrothal to be arranged while you're still a small child, your marriage decided upon and formalized in agreements long before you have any capacity to understand or consent to it. You might be promised to a boy who is himself a child, or to a grown man in a distant land as part of some larger diplomatic arrangement. Your consent is not a factor, because you are not, in this context, a person choosing a partner, but an asset being allocated. And these arrangements are anything but stable. Alliances shift, political winds change, wars break out and end, and a betrothal that made perfect sense one year may become inconvenient or undesirable the next. So engagements are made and unmade with a frequency that would be dizzying if it concerned anyone with a say in the matter. You may find yourself promised first to one prince, then, when circumstances alter, to another, and perhaps to a third after that, your marital destiny revised repeatedly according to the needs of the moment. Consider what this means to live through. You may grow up with the knowledge that you are to marry a particular distant figure, forming some vague idea of your future, only to have that future dissolved and replaced when the diplomacy changes. The men to whom you are attached come and go on the tides of politics, none of them chosen by you, some of them never even met. Your sense of what your life will be is perpetually provisional, subject to revision by decisions made in rooms you will never enter, over matters you cannot influence. There is a strange, dehumanizing quality to being so thoroughly an object of negotiation. Foreign ambassadors assess your value, your dowry is haggled over, your suitability is weighed against political advantage, all as though you were a particularly fine piece of property being brought to market. Your personal desires, your feelings, your preferences simply do not enter into it. The great game of dynastic alliance treats you as a piece to be moved and placed, however finely dressed and richly educated that piece may be. So this, then, is the purpose beneath all the lessons and manners and finery, the reason you have been so carefully cultivated. You are a chip in a vast and serious game played by kings, your marriage a card to be played for advantage. Everything has prepared you for a union you will not choose, to a man selected for reasons of state. It is a heavy destiny to carry, made heavier by the waiting it so often involves, waiting for a stranger whose face you may know only from a flattering painting. Since your marriage is a matter of statecraft rather than romance, let's talk about the surreal experience of waiting for a husband you have never laid eyes on. Portraits are exchanged, though these are flattering to the point of fiction, so the charming young man in the painting may bear only a passing resemblance to the actual groom. Ambassadors haggle over your dowry as though you are livestock at market. You wait and wait, while distant men debate your future in rooms you're not allowed into, and there is always the chance that after years of waiting, the whole thing collapses over politics, and you begin again. Let's start with the portraits, those small painted windows onto your possible future. When a match is being considered across distances too great for the parties to simply meet, images are exchanged so that each side might assess the other. A painting of your intended is sent for your family's consideration, and one of you travels the other way. It is a sensible enough system in theory, allowing some impression to be formed before commitments are made. In practice, it introduces a rich opportunity for artful misrepresentation, because these portraits are, shall we say, generous. A painter commissioned to depict a prospective spouse understands perfectly well that his work is a piece of diplomacy meant to please and to flatter, so the resulting image tends toward the idealized, smoothing away flaws, enhancing charms, presenting the subject in the most appealing possible light. The dashing figure you study in the portrait may prove, upon actual meeting, to be considerably less dashing in person. You are, in essence, being courted by an optimistic advertisement rather than an honest likeness. While the images travel, the real business grinds on, and it is conducted with all the romance of a commercial transaction. Ambassadors and negotiators haggle over the terms of your marriage, chief among them your dowry, the wealth and property that will accompany you to your husband. Sums are proposed and counted, conditions are set, advantages are weighed. Your value is quite literally quantified and bargained over, your future settled through the kind of hard negotiation one might expect over land or trade goods. You are the subject of the deal, not a party to it. And through all of this, your own role is simply to wait. The discussions happen elsewhere, among men, in rooms and councils from which you are excluded. Your fate is being determined, sometimes over long stretches of time, and you have no seat at the table where it is decided. You wait to learn whether the match will proceed, whom you will marry, and when, dependent entirely on the outcome of negotiations you cannot influence. It is a peculiar limbo, your life on hold while others settle its terms without you. The waiting can stretch on for years, and it carries a persistent uncertainty, because these arrangements are always vulnerable to collapse. A shift in the political situation, a change of alliance, a fresh conflict, or a new opportunity, any of these can cause a match to fall apart after long negotiation. All that waiting, all that anticipation of a particular future can simply evaporate, and you find yourself back at the beginning, a fresh round of portraits and haggling and waiting, commencing for some new prospect. Nothing is settled until it is truly done. So you exist in a strange state of suspended anticipation, awaiting a husband who is to you a flattering painting and a name in a negotiation, uncertain whether this match or the next will be the one that holds. The man who will shape the rest of your life remains a stranger, glimpsed through diplomacy and idealized portraiture, while your future is bartered in distant rooms. It is a disorienting way to approach the most consequential relationship of your life. And all of this unfolds within a court that is itself a treacherous tangle of competing interests. Now that you understand your value as a pawn, let's examine the board you sit on. Because the Tudor court is a seething tangle of rival factions all manoeuvring for power. Families rise and fall based on the monarch's favour, and everyone around you is calculating how you might be useful or dangerous to their ambitions. A kind word to the wrong noble, a warm glance at the wrong faction, and you've accidentally made enemies who never forget. You must learn to read a room like a battlefield, to trust almost no one, and to smile pleasantly at people who would happily see your household ruined. Let's begin with the fundamental nature of the court, which is not the glittering social gathering it might appear, but a fierce competition for power and favour. Great families and ambitious individuals jockey constantly for position, influence, and access to the monarch, who is the ultimate source of all advancement. This competition organises itself into factions, shifting alliances of interest that support one another and oppose their rivals. Beneath the elegant surface of courtly life runs a relentless current of ambition, rivalry and manoeuvring, and it never truly stops. The stakes of this competition are enormous, because in your world the favour of the monarch determines everything. A family in favour rises, gaining wealth, titles, offices and influence. A family that falls from favour can lose it all, sometimes catastrophically. So the manoeuvring is not idle politics, but a matter of fortunes and futures, pursued with corresponding intensity. Everyone around you is playing this game, whether openly or subtly, and the game admits no timeouts. To be at court is to be perpetually engaged in the struggle for position, one way or another. Within this environment you are a significant piece, and everyone around you knows it. Your rank, your potential marriage, your proximity to the throne, all make you an object of intense interest to the factions. Some will see you as a route to advancement, someone to cultivate, befriend, or align with. Others may see you as a threat, an obstacle, or a rival to their own preferred candidates and schemes. Either way, you're being constantly assessed and calculated over, your usefulness and your danger weighed by ambitious minds all around you. This makes your every interaction fraught with hidden significance. A friendly word to a particular noble, an apparent warmth toward one faction, even a glance or a gesture can be read as a signal of allegiance and can align you, in the eyes of observers, with one side against another. You may make enemies without ever intending to, simply by seeming to favour the wrong people. And enemies made at court are not easily unmade because the rivalries run deep and the memories are long. A careless moment can have consequences that follow you for years. So you must learn to navigate this treacherous ground with great care, reading the room the way a commander reads a battlefield. You need to understand who stands with whom, where the currents of power are flowing, which alliances are rising and which are crumbling. You must weigh your words and your gestures, aware always of how they might be interpreted and used. Trust becomes something extended sparingly and cautiously, because so many of those around you have interests that may not align with yours, however pleasantly they smile. And smile you must, at all of them, including those who would gladly see you brought low. Courtly life demands a polished surface of grace and civility, maintained regardless of the ambitions churning underneath. You greet rivals warmly, exchange pleasantries with people scheming against your interests, and betray none of the wariness you feel. It is a constant, exhausting performance of composure over caution. Mastering this dangerous social terrain is essential to your survival, because everything at court ultimately flows from a single source, the one person whose mood governs your entire fate. Let's talk about the single most important weather system in your life, which is not the sky, but your father the king. Royal favour is everything, and it is astonishingly fragile. A monarch's affection can warm you one week and freeze you out the next, depending on politics, marriages, religion, or simple temper. When you're in favour, you have fine apartments, generous allowances, and a place of honour. When you're out of it, your household shrinks, your allowance vanishes, and you're quietly moved somewhere less comfortable to think about what you have done, even if you have done nothing at all. Let's establish just how total the monarch's power over your life truly is. The king is the ultimate authority, the source from which all favour, wealth, and status flow, and your entire position depends on standing well with him. This is your father, yes, but he is first and foremost a monarch, and his relationship to you is shaped by matters of state far more than by ordinary paternal affection. His regard determines the shape and comfort of your existence, and his regard is not a fixed and reliable thing, but something that shifts with circumstance and temperament. Consider the many forces that can move the royal mood. Politics can turn you from an asset into a liability. A shift in the marriage negotiations that define your worth can raise or lower you in his estimation. Changes in religion, always volatile in your world, can suddenly make your position awkward or suspect. And beyond all these weighty matters lies simple temper, the ordinary human moods of a powerful man, which can affect how you are treated regardless of anything you have actually done. You're subject to all of it, with little ability to influence any of it. When you enjoy the king's favour, life is good, or at least as good as your confined and watched existence allows. You're housed in fine apartments, granted generous allowances to maintain yourself in appropriate style, given a place of honour and respect. Your household is well staffed, your needs met, your dignity affirmed. You occupy the position your rank should command, treated as the valued princess you are. In these times, the arrangement of your life reflects your closeness to the source of all good things at court. But let favor withdraw, and the transformation is swift and stark. Your household may be reduced, attendance dismissed, your establishment shrunk to something far more modest. Your allowance can dwindle or dry up, leaving you to manage on far less. You may be moved to lesser accommodations, quietly removed from the centre of things. Your reduced circumstances a visible signal of your fall. The whole apparatus of your comfort and status contracts, and everyone at court reads the change accurately, understanding at once that you have slipped in the royal regard. The cruelest feature of all this is how little your own conduct may have to do with it. You can find yourself out of favour through no fault of your own, caught up in political shifts, marital calculations, or religious changes that have nothing to do with your behaviour. You may have done everything right, and still find yourself frozen out because the winds have changed. Punishment, or its equivalent in withdrawn comforts and diminished standing, can fall upon you for reasons entirely beyond your control, leaving you to endure a fall you did nothing to earn. So you live perpetually attuned to the royal mood, watchful of the king's regard the way one might anxiously watch a changeable sky. Your fortunes rise and fall with his favour, and that favour is fragile, unpredictable, and only partly connected to anything you can affect. It is an unsettling way to exist, your comfort and dignity hostage to the temperament and calculations of one supremely powerful man, and that same power that can merely diminish you also holds the terrifying capacity to unmake you entirely, even to strip away the very title that defines you. Now for a particularly Tudor flavour of nightmare, one that is not exaggeration for comedy but simply what happened. Your very status as a princess can be revoked with the stroke of a pen. If your parents' marriage is annulled or declared invalid, you can be officially reclassified as illegitimate, stripped of your title, and demoted from princess to a lesser rank overnight. Your household is reduced, your prospects collapse, and you're expected to accept it gracefully. You might spend years as a bastard, then be quietly restored to favour later when it suits the crown. Your identity itself is at the mercy of politics. Let's begin with the mechanism, because it hinges on the fragile foundation of your parents' marriage. Your status as a legitimate princess rests entirely on the validity of the union that produced you. If that marriage is annulled, declared to have never been lawful in the first place, then in the cold logic of the law, you cease to be the legitimate offspring of a valid marriage. And a marriage can indeed be challenged and undone, particularly when a monarch has powerful reasons to wish it so. Your legitimacy, it turns out, is not a fact of nature, but a legal position, and legal positions can be reversed. When such a reversal occurs, the consequences for you are immediate and severe. You're officially reclassified as illegitimate, a bastard in the eyes of the law and the court. Your title as princess is stripped away, and you are demoted to a lesser rank, your former standing simply erased. This is not a gradual decline, but a formal, decisive change of status, accomplished through official declaration. One day you are a princess of the realm, and effectively the next you are something considerably diminished, your grand identity legally dismantled. The practical effects follow swiftly upon the legal ones. Your household, once befitting a princess, is reduced accordingly, its size and grandeur cut to match your new lower station. The prospects that defined your future, chief among them the great dynastic marriage you were being groomed for, collapse, because a bastard is a far less valuable piece on the diplomatic board than a legitimate princess. The whole architecture of your expected life, built up over years, comes down, and you must adjust to a reality far smaller and less certain than the one you were raised to expect. And through this wrenching demotion, you're expected to conduct yourself with grace, to accept your altered status without protest or complaint. There is no room for open resentment or defiance, because the will behind your demotion is the will of the crown, and resistance would be both futile and dangerous. You must absorb the loss of your title, your standing, and your prospects with outward composure, bowing to a decision made far above you. The expectation is not merely that you endure the change, but that you endure it obediently, whatever you may feel within. Yet here is the strange, unstable heart of it all, that this reclassification need not be permanent. Just as politics can strip you of your legitimacy, so politics can restore it. You might spend years in the diminished state of a bastard, only to be quietly returned to favour and rank later, when circumstances change and it suits the crown to do so. Your status can swing back and forth according to the needs and calculations of the moment, elevating and demoting you as the political situation dictates. Stability is simply not something your identity is permitted to have. Consider what this does to your very sense of who you are. Your identity, the fundamental question of whether you're a princess or a bastard, legitimate or not, is placed entirely at the mercy of political forces beyond your control. It can be taken and given back, revised and reversed, as though the truth of your birth were merely a matter of current convenience. You cannot rely even on this most basic fact of your existence, because it can be rewritten by decree. It is a profound insecurity, a life in which nothing about your standing is ever truly settled, and this precariousness plays out against the backdrop of your grand and gilded home, which offers its own particular brand of splendid discomfort. Let's turn to your grand home, which is enormous, magnificent, and absolutely freezing. Tudor palaces are built of stone, draughts, and ambition, with vast echoing chambers that no amount of tapestries can fully warm. Fires roar in the great hearths, but the heat vanishes into the towering ceilings, leaving you shivering in your finery just a few feet away. And because these palaces have no proper plumbing, and thousands of people passing through, they must periodically be emptied entirely, so the whole place can be scrubbed of accumulated filth. Your beautiful royal residence is essentially a splendid, gilded, poorly heated barn that requires regular airing out. Let's start with the sheer scale of the place, because a royal palace is vast beyond anything ordinary experience prepares you for. Great halls, long galleries, soaring chambers, endless corridors, all built of stone on an ambitious and imposing scale. It is designed to awe, to impress upon everyone who enters the majesty and power of the crown, and in that it succeeds magnificently. But scale and stone come with a price paid in comfort, because these enormous spaces are extraordinarily difficult to keep warm, and stone, for all its grandeur, holds the cold with real dedication. The heating, such as it is, relies on great open fires blazing in massive hearths. These fires are impressive, throwing out real heat and light, and gathering near one is genuinely pleasant. But the warmth they produce is hopelessly outmatched by the volume of the rooms they are meant to heat. The heat rises and disperses into the towering ceilings and echoing spaces, leaving much of the chamber cold. Stand close to the hearth, and you may be warm on one side. Step a few paces away, and the chill reclaims you at once. It is warmth confined to a small radius, in a very large, very cold room. The tapestries that adorn your walls are not purely decorative, though they are certainly beautiful. They serve the practical purpose of insulating the cold stone, trapping a little warmth, and blocking some of the draughts that find their way through the fabric of the building. And draughts there are in abundance, because a structure of this size and age is riddled with gaps and openings through which the cold air steals. Even swathed in rich hangings, the palace remains a draughty place, the cold seeping in around windows and doors and through the very stones themselves. You shiver in your splendid surroundings, wrapped in finery and still feeling the chill. Then there is the matter of sanitation, which the palace handles poorly given the sheer number of people it contains. Thousands may pass through a great royal residence, and the arrangements for dealing with the waste and filth of such a crowd are primitive by any modern measure. Over time, grime and foulness accumulate throughout the building, no matter the efforts to manage it. A palace packed with people is a palace steadily growing dirtier, and the accumulated filth becomes both unpleasant and, in an age that fears bad air, alarming. The solution to this is as dramatic as it is revealing. Periodically, the entire court must pack up and leave, emptying the palace completely so that the whole place can be thoroughly cleaned. The building is aired out, scrubbed and refreshed while its royal occupants relocate elsewhere. This is not a minor tidying, but a wholesale evacuation, undertaken precisely because a continuously occupied palace becomes intolerable over time. Your magnificent home requires regular abandonment simply to remain habitable, which says a great deal about what daily life within it is actually like. So you dwell in genuine splendour, surrounded by grandeur and beauty, and the trappings of supreme status, and you are cold, and at times living amid accumulating filth. The palace impresses everyone who beholds it, and comfortably warms almost no one. It is a gilded, draughty, periodically evacuated marvel, awe-inspiring and thoroughly inconvenient in equal measure. And that periodic evacuation, that packing up of the entire court, leads directly into one of the more grueling recurring features of royal life, the great lumbering journey known as the Progress. Speaking of emptying the palace, let's discuss where you go when it becomes unlivable, on progress. The court packs up and travels, moving the entire royal household from estate to estate in an enormous lumbering caravan of wagons, horses, servants and luggage. It sounds like a lovely tour of the countryside until you realise it means jolting along rutted roads for hours, sleeping in unfamiliar beds, and imposing your entire staff on nervous hosts who nearly bankrupt themselves feeding you. Your possessions are constantly packed and unpacked. Your comfort is secondary to logistics. The scenery is nice, but your spine files a formal complaint. Let's begin with the scale of the undertaking, because moving a royal court is no simple matter of tossing a bag in a cart. The court is an enormous body of people, hundreds upon hundreds of them, along with all the furnishings, hangings, plate, clothing, and countless possessions required to maintain royal life. Relocating all of this means assembling a vast caravan of wagons and horses, a slow-moving procession of people and goods stretching along the road. It is a massive logistical operation, and you are but one traveller within this ponderous, creaking migration across the countryside. The travel itself is a genuine ordeal, whatever charm the notion of a countryside journey might suggest. The roads of your era are rough, rutted and uneven, and the miles jolt by slowly and uncomfortably. Hours spent travelling over such ground, whether on horseback or in some conveyance, punish the body thoroughly. There is nothing smooth or swift about it. You endure the jolting and the tedium for long stretches, the discomfort accumulating with every rough mile, arriving at each destination weary and battered by the sheer physical toll of getting there. Then there is the matter of where you stay, because a progress means a constant succession of unfamiliar lodgings. You move from estate to estate, sleeping in beds and chambers not your own, adjusting again and again to new surroundings. There is little of the comfort that comes from familiar rooms and settled routines. Just as you grow accustomed to one place, it is time to pack up and move on to the next. Your possessions are perpetually being packed away and unpacked, a ceaseless cycle of settling and unsettling that allows for no real sense of home along the way. Spare a thought, too, for the hosts on whom this enormous court descends. When the royal household arrives at a nobleman's estate, that unfortunate host is obliged to accommodate and feed the entire vast company, an expense that can be genuinely ruinous. To host the court is a great honour and a great burden all at once, and many a host has strained his resources to the limit trying to provide fittingly. The nervous scramble to feed and house so many, to impress the crown without collapsing under the cost, is a very real feature of the progress, and the sums involved could bankrupt the unlucky and the overeager. Throughout all of this, your own comfort is decidedly secondary to the demands of logistics. The progress is undertaken for reasons of state and practicality, to allow palaces to be cleaned, to display the monarch to the realm, to distribute the cost of maintaining the court. It is not arranged for your ease or pleasure. So you are swept along in the great migration, your convenience subordinate to the larger machinery of the enterprise, enduring the discomforts because that is simply what the progress requires of everyone caught up in it, yourself included. There is, to be fair, some genuine reward, because the countryside you pass through can be beautiful, and there is novelty in seeing new places and estates. The scenery offers real pleasures to a traveller willing to look for them, but these pleasures come wrapped in physical hardship, the jolting roads and the strange beds and the endless packing exacting their steady toll. The progress is a mixture of spectacle and suffering, grand in conception and gruelling in practice. And should all this travelling and discomfort leave you unwell, you fall into the hands of your physicians, whose remedies are their own particular adventure. Let's talk about what happens when you fall ill, because royal medicine is a blend of learning, guesswork, and enthusiastic bloodletting. Your physicians are learned men who believe your health depends on balancing the four humours sloshing around inside you. So a fever might be treated by draining some of your blood, an ailment by purging, a mood by adjusting your diet according to whether it is deemed too hot, cold, wet, or dry. Being royal means you get the very best doctors of the age, which unfortunately still means you might be bled, purged, and prescribed powdered gemstones for a headache. Let's start with the theory that governs all of this, the doctrine of the four humours. Your physicians believe the body contains four fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, and that health depends on keeping these in proper balance. Illness, in this view, arises when the humours fall out of balance, one becoming excessive or deficient. Treatment, therefore, aims to restore the balance by reducing whatever is in excess. It is a coherent, learned system, taught and studied seriously, and it is also, from a modern standpoint, almost entirely wrong, which makes its confident application to your royal person a somewhat alarming affair. The most notorious tool for restoring balance is bloodletting, the deliberate draining of blood from the patient. If your trouble is thought to stem from an excess of blood, the logical remedy is to remove some of it, and so you may be bled, your life's blood drawn off into a bowl in the sincere belief that this will make you well. It is applied to fevers and a wide range of complaints. That draining blood from a sick person is more likely to weaken than to heal them is not understood, and so this treatment is administered with real conviction, sometimes repeatedly. Purging is another favoured approach, the clearing out of the body through various unpleasant means to expel whatever corrupt humour is thought to be causing the trouble. Where bloodletting reduces excess blood, purging addresses other imbalances by forcibly emptying the system. It is uncomfortable, undignified, and grounded in the same flawed theory, but it follows the internal logic perfectly. If illness comes from something bad within, then removing that something, by whatever route, ought to help. So you may be purged as readily as bled, all in the name of restoring your humoral equilibrium. Diet, too, is enlisted in the balancing act. Foods being classified according to qualities of hot, cold, wet, and dry. If your condition is judged to arise from too much of one quality, your diet may be adjusted to counteract it, favouring foods thought to have the opposite nature. Even your moods are understood in humoral terms and treated accordingly, a melancholy disposition, for instance, being linked to an excess of black bile, and addressed through corresponding remedies. Your physicians thus manage not only your bodily ailments, but your temperament through this same elaborate and mistaken framework. The remedies prescribed can be exotic and expensive, befitting your status. Powdered gemstones, rare substances, and costly preparations may be administered on the theory that precious and potent materials must surely possess healing virtue. Being royal, you receive treatments beyond the reach of ordinary people, which is not, in this case, the advantage it sounds. The finest and most expensive medicine of your age is still built on the same misunderstandings, so your privilege buys you more elaborate versions of treatments that are as likely to harm as to help. And here is the true irony of your medical care, that you're attended by the most learned and celebrated physicians available, the very best the age can offer, and their best remains bloodletting, purging, and powdered stones. Your rank ensures you the finest medicine, and the finest medicine is founded on error. So when you fall ill, you are placed in the hands of confident, educated men who will bleed you, purge you, and dose you with expensive nonsense, all with the utmost seriousness. Being royal does not spare you this. It merely guarantees you the most distinguished version of it. And speaking of the privileges of rank, even the clothes on your back are governed by the force of law. Now that we have covered how uncomfortable your clothes are, let's cover how they are also legislated. Tudor England has strict rules about who may wear what, laws that reserve certain fabrics, furs, and colours for the highest ranks alone. As royalty, you sit at the very top of this pyramid, draped in silks, cloth of gold, and rich purples that ordinary people are forbidden by law from wearing. Your wardrobe is not merely fashion, it is a walking legal declaration of your status. Every thread announces exactly how important you are supposed to be, and woe to the merchant's wife who dares dress above her station. Let's begin with the surprising fact that clothing is a matter of actual law in your world. There exist regulations governing who may wear which fabrics, furs, and colours, tied strictly to rank and status. These are not mere customs or social expectations, but formal rules with real force behind them. The idea is that dress should reflect and reinforce the social hierarchy, that a person's outward appearance should announce their proper place. And so the finest and most costly materials are legally restricted, reserved for those of sufficiently exalted rank to be permitted them. At the very top of this legally enforced hierarchy sits royalty, which is to say, you. The most magnificent materials, the ones forbidden to lesser folk, are yours by right of your position. You are draped in silks of exquisite quality, in cloth of gold that gleams with actual precious metal woven into the fabric, in rich purples that carry particular prestige and are reserved for the highest ranks. These are the visible marks of supreme status, luxuries so exalted that the law itself guards them for people like you. Your wardrobe is a treasury of the restricted and the rare. Consider what this means for how your clothing functions, because it is far more than adornment. Every garment you wear is a legal statement of your rank, an announcement, backed by the authority of law, of exactly how important you are. The fabrics, the furs, the colours all communicate your place at the summit of society to anyone who beholds you. You cannot simply dress as you please. Your dress is a matter of status and law intertwined. To be clothed as royalty is to wear your position visibly upon your body, a walking proclamation of where you stand in the order of things. The flip side of your privilege is the strict prohibition placed upon everyone else. Ordinary people are forbidden by law from wearing the materials reserved for their betters, and dressing above one's station is a genuine transgression, not merely a faux pas. The merchant's wife who drapes herself in fabrics meant for the nobility risks real consequences, because she is presuming to a rank the law says is not hers. The system places these boundaries deliberately, ensuring that the visible markers of status remain confined to those entitled to them, and that no one may falsely elevate themselves through mere clothing. The purpose behind all of this is the preservation of the social order itself. In a world deeply invested in hierarchy and rank, the ability to read a person's station at a glance matters, and clothing provides exactly that legibility when it is strictly regulated. By reserving certain splendours for the highest ranks, the law ensures that appearance reliably reflects position. Your magnificent dress is thus part of a larger project of keeping everyone visibly in their place, the finery at the top matched by prohibitions all the way down. So you wear your silks and cloth of gold and royal purple, not merely because they are beautiful, though they are, but because they are yours by law, and forbidden to nearly everyone else. Your wardrobe is a privilege of rank enforced by statute, every garment a declaration of supremacy that lesser people may admire but never imitate. It is fashion as legislation, splendour as status made visible and lawful. Yet for all this legally guaranteed magnificence draped upon you, the wealth it represents is, in a curious way, not truly yours at all. Let's talk about your money, or rather the amusing fact that you have none of your own. Yes, you live surrounded by unimaginable wealth, but almost none of it actually belongs to you to command. Your household is funded by the crown, your allowance can be granted or withdrawn at will, and your jewels and gowns are more the property of your rank than of you personally. You cannot simply decide to spend, to travel, or to support yourself. You are lavishly maintained and completely dependent, a person of enormous value who does not actually possess control over so much as a single coin. Let's begin with the striking contradiction at the heart of your material existence. You're surrounded by wealth of a kind most people cannot imagine. Magnificent palaces, gorgeous clothing, precious jewels, abundant food, an entire household devoted to your comfort. By any outward measure, you live in extraordinary luxury, and yet almost none of this abundance is genuinely yours to command. You dwell amid riches without truly possessing them, enjoying the benefits of great wealth while lacking any real control over it. You are, in a very real sense, rich and penniless at the same time. Consider first how your entire way of life is funded, because the answer reveals your dependence. Your household, with all its staff and expenses, is maintained by the crown. The money that supports you flows from a source outside yourself, granted to sustain you in the style your rank requires. You do not earn it, control it, or hold it independently. It is provided to you, and what is provided can also be adjusted, reduced, or withheld according to the will of those who provide it. Your comfortable existence rests entirely on this external support, which you cannot secure for yourself. Your allowance, the funds notionally at your disposal, is likewise granted rather than owned, and it can be given or taken away at will. In times of favour it may be generous, in times of disfavour it may shrink or vanish. You have no independent claim to it, no way to guarantee its continuance. It is a privilege extended to you, not a possession you hold securely. This means that even the money meant for your own use hangs on the goodwill and calculations of others, subject to withdrawal whenever it suits those who control the purse. Even your jewels and gowns, the splendid things you wear, belong more to your rank than to you as a person. They adorn you because you are a princess, markers of the status you occupy rather than personal property you freely own and control. Should your position change, these trappings may be reassigned or withdrawn along with it. You are in effect the temporary bearer of magnificence that attaches to your role, not the true owner of it. The glittering wealth on your person is the wardrobe of your station, held for as long as you hold the station itself. The practical result of all this is a profound lack of autonomy. You cannot simply decide to spend as you wish, to travel where you please, or to support yourself through your own means. You lack the independent resources that would make such freedom possible. Every significant thing you might want to do depends on the permission and provision of others. For all your value and all your splendor, you cannot direct your own material life, because you do not command the wealth that surrounds you. You are maintained, not empowered, so you exist in this peculiar state of gilded dependence, a person of enormous worth and no real financial control, lavished with luxury and unable to command a single coin on your own authority. Your value to others is immense, yet you cannot convert that value into any freedom of your own. It is wealth without ownership, splendor without independence, a life of abundance in which you are ultimately powerless over the very riches that define you. And in the absence of any control over your fortune, the one thing that remains truly yours to safeguard is your reputation, which you must protect at every waking moment. Since your every material need is managed by others, let's examine the one thing that truly is yours to protect, your reputation. As a princess, your virtue and conduct are matters of national importance, because your marriageability, and therefore your entire political worth, depends on your unblemished good name. This means you are watched constantly for any hint of impropriety. A rumour, a misread friendship, an unguarded moment, and gossip spreads through the court like fire through dry thatch. You must guard your behaviour every waking second, performing perfect modesty and grace, knowing that a single whisper could damage your value and your future beyond repair. Let's begin by understanding why your reputation carries such enormous weight. Your entire political value rests upon your suitability as a bride in a great dynastic marriage, and that suitability depends heavily on your virtue and the spotlessness of your good name. A princess whose reputation is unblemished is a valuable, desirable match. A princess touched by scandal is diminished, her worth as a diplomatic asset compromised. Your good name is therefore not a private concern, but a matter of real political and dynastic importance, tied directly to the purpose your whole life has been shaped to serve. This raises the stakes of your conduct to an extraordinary degree, because anything that threatens your reputation threatens your value and your future. Your virtue must be beyond question, your behaviour beyond reproach, your good name protected as the precious asset it is. There is no room for the ordinary lapses and follies that others might indulge in and recover from. For you, a stain upon your reputation could damage the very thing that makes you useful to your family and your realm, and so its protection becomes a matter of constant, serious vigilance. Consequently, you are watched, always and closely, for any hint of impropriety. Your conduct is under perpetual observation, scrutinized by the many people who surround you and by the wider court beyond them. Nothing you do escapes notice, and everything you do is subject to interpretation. You live under a kind of continuous surveillance, your behaviour forever on display and forever assessed. There is no off-stage moment, no time when you are unobserved and free to relax your guard, because the watching never stops and the assessment never ceases. The danger lies in how easily reputation can be damaged, often by things far short of actual wrongdoing. A mere rumour, whether founded or not, can do real harm. A friendship innocently meant but capable of being misread can invite dangerous speculation. An unguarded moment, A gesture or word open to unflattering interpretation can be seized upon and spread. In a court that thrives on gossip, such things travel with astonishing speed, running through the place like fire through dry thatch. You need not do anything genuinely improper to find your good name imperiled. The mere appearance or suggestion of it can be enough. This forces upon you a relentless self-discipline, a guarding of your behaviour in every waking moment. You must perform perfect modesty and grace continuously, never letting slip anything that could be misconstrued, never allowing yourself the careless ease that others might take for granted. Every interaction, every gesture, every word must be measured against how it might be perceived and what use might be made of it. You're always managing the impression you create, always conscious of the watching eyes, always maintaining the flawless propriety your position demands. It is an exhausting, unending performance, and the cruelty of it is how much rests on how little, because a single whisper could damage your value and your future beyond repair. All your care might be undone by one persistent rumour, one misinterpreted moment, one piece of gossip that takes hold and will not let go. The consequences of a damaged reputation could follow you permanently, harming your prospects and your standing in ways that cannot be easily mended. So you guard yourself ceaselessly, aware that the stakes are your entire future and that the margin for error is vanishingly small. And it is this carefully protected reputation, this spotless good name, that finally delivers you to the very purpose it was all meant to serve, your marriage at last. After years of negotiation, waiting, and portrait swapping, the marriage is finally arranged, and now you must actually go and be married. You may be sent far from everything you have ever known, to a foreign court where they speak a language you have studied but never lived in, to wed a man you are meeting essentially for the first time. The wedding itself is a grand political spectacle, celebrated by everyone except possibly the two people getting married, and once the ceremony ends, your new and most urgent duty becomes brutally clear, because a royal wife exists above all to produce a son. Let's begin with the moment of arrival, the culmination of all that waiting and negotiation. After the years of exchanged portraits, haggled dowries, and uncertain suspense, the match is at last settled, and the wedding must actually take place. This is the event toward which your entire life has been directed, the fulfillment of your purpose as a dynastic asset. And yet, for all its momentousness, it arrives as something happening to you rather than something you have chosen, the long-planned outcome of decisions made by others finally coming to pass with you at its centre. The wedding often requires you to leave behind everything familiar. You may be sent far away, to a foreign court in a distant land, to take up your new life among strangers. Everything you have known, your home, your household, the faces and places of your upbringing, may be left behind as you travel to your husband's realm. It is a wrenching displacement, a departure into the unknown, and it is simply expected of you, one more duty of your station. You go where the marriage requires, however far that may be from all you have ever known. The foreignness of your new home can be profound, even down to the language. You may arrive in a court where the tongue spoken is one you have studied diligently but never actually lived in, learned from books and tutors rather than from daily life. To move from academic knowledge of a language to dwelling within it, surrounded by native speakers, using it for every ordinary purpose, is a considerable adjustment. Here, at least, your rigorous education proves its worth, though the gap between the language of the schoolroom and the language of a living court is one you must bridge quickly and under pressure. Then there is the groom himself, the man you are to marry, whom you are meeting essentially for the first time, All you have known of him has come through flattering portraits and the reports of negotiators, and now you encounter the reality. This is the person to whom you will be bound for life, and you come to him as near strangers, your acquaintance beginning in earnest only as your marriage does. Whatever he proves to be, agreeable or otherwise, you must make your life with him, the match having been made for reasons of state rather than any bond between you. The wedding itself is a magnificent spectacle, a grand occasion of political and dynastic celebration. It marks the sealing of alliances, the joining of houses, the achievement of the diplomatic aims your marriage serves, and it is observed with all the pageantry such an event demands. The realm celebrates, the courts rejoice, the significance of the union is proclaimed. Everyone, it seems, has cause for celebration, with the possible exception of the two people actually being married, for whom the day may hold rather more uncertainty than joy beneath all the ceremony and splendour. And when the celebrations subside, your new and most pressing duty stands starkly revealed. A royal wife exists above all to produce a male heir, to secure the succession and continue the line, and this expectation settles upon you at once. The purpose of your marriage, beyond its diplomatic function, is fundamentally dynastic, and that purpose now becomes your central task. The pageantry gives way to expectation, and you understand that your worth in this new role will be measured, above all, by your ability to bear a son. And that expectation carries with it a peril as grave as any you have faced, for childbirth in your age is genuinely dangerous. Now that you are wed, let's confront the terrifying job at the heart of your new role, childbirth. Producing a healthy male heir is the entire point of your marriage, and the pressure is immense and unrelenting. But childbirth in the Tudor age is genuinely dangerous, with no reliable medicine, no understanding of infection, and enormous risk to both mother and child. Even queens and princesses die in childbed, and even royal babies are lost. Each pregnancy is a gamble with your life, and if you produce only daughters, or no living children at all, the disappointment and the danger to your position both grow heavier with every passing year. Let's begin with the central expectation that now defines your existence, the production of a healthy male heir. This is understood to be the very purpose of your marriage, the reason the union was made and the standard against which your success as a wife will be measured. The pressure is immense and does not relent, because the stakes are dynastic, the continuation of a line, the security of a succession. Everyone looks to you to fulfill this duty, and their expectations bear down upon you constantly. Your worth, in this new role, is bound up entirely with your ability to bear a son. But this duty, so heavily demanded, is one of the most dangerous things a woman of your age can undertake. Childbirth in the Tudor world is genuinely perilous, unshielded by the medical knowledge that later ages would develop. There is no reliable medicine to ease or safeguard the process, no understanding of infection and how it spreads, none of the interventions that could avert disaster. The risks to both mother and child are enormous and ever-present, and they cannot be reasoned or wished away. To bear a child is to place yourself in real mortal danger, again and again. The danger does not spare the highly born. Even queens and princesses, with the finest care their world can offer, die in childbed, and even royal infants, so longed for and so precious, are lost. Rank provides no reliable protection against these hazards, because the underlying medicine is simply inadequate for everyone, however exalted. So you cannot comfort yourself with the thought that your status shields you from the worst. The perils of childbirth reach into palaces as readily as into humbler homes, claiming mothers and babies without regard for their importance. Each pregnancy, therefore, is a genuine gamble with your life, an undertaking whose outcome cannot be assured. You face the possibility of your own death and the death of your child every time, the risk renewed with each occasion. And this is not a danger encountered once, but potentially many times over, as the pressure to produce a surviving male heir may require pregnancy after pregnancy. Each one carries its own peril, its own uncertain outcome, so that the very duty at the heart of your role repeatedly places your survival in question. It is a heavy and frightening burden to carry. Consider too the compounding weight of failure to produce what is demanded. Should you bear only daughters, or should your children fail to survive, or should you have no living children at all, the situation grows steadily worse. The disappointment deepens, and with it the danger to your position, because a royal wife who does not deliver the desired heir becomes vulnerable. Her failure to fulfill her central purpose can imperil her standing, her security, even her place in the marriage itself. The pressure thus intensifies over time, the stakes rising with every year that passes without the longed-for son. So you face this terrifying duty at the core of your married life, charged with producing an heir through a process that genuinely threatens your survival, under relentless pressure, with the danger to your position mounting should you fail to deliver what is required. It is a role that combines the highest expectation with the gravest personal risk, a gamble repeated as often as the demand for a son requires. Your body becomes the instrument on which dynastic hopes rest, and the cost of those hopes is borne by you alone. And beyond even this mortal peril lies another shadow, the ever-present possibility of a fall from grace so complete that it ends behind fortress walls. Let's address the grim possibility that hangs over every powerful woman in this court, because in Tudor England, being royal offers no protection from ruin, and sometimes invites it. Fall far enough from favour, become entangled in the wrong faction, or simply stand too close to the throne at the wrong moment, and you may find yourself imprisoned. The Tower of London is not merely a fortress, it is a threat, a waiting room, and for some a final destination. Princesses have been confined there, watched, questioned, and left to wonder whether the next set of footsteps in the corridor is bringing supper or something far worse. Let's begin with the sobering truth that your exalted status is no shield against destruction. One might imagine that being royal, being a princess, would place you safely above the dangers that threaten ordinary people, but the reverse can be true. Your very proximity to power and the throne can make you a target, an object of suspicion, a piece in dangerous games. Being highly born does not protect you from ruin, it can actively invite it, drawing you into perils that lesser figures never face. The heights you occupy are precisely what expose you to the most catastrophic falls. Consider the various ways such a fall might come about. You might fall far enough from the monarch's favour to find yourself in real danger, your diminished standing leaving you exposed. You might become entangled, whether by your own actions or others, in the wrong faction, caught up in schemes and rivalries that turn deadly. Or you might simply stand too close to the throne at the wrong moment, your nearness to the succession making you a threat or a tool in the eyes of those who fear or would use you. Any of these can bring you to disaster, sometimes with little that you could have done to prevent it. When such ruin comes, it can take the form of imprisonment, and the place of that imprisonment looms large in the imagination of your world. The Tower of London is far more than a mere fortress. It is a symbol laden with dread. It serves as a threat held over the heads of the powerful, a warning of what may await those who fall. It is a waiting room where the accused and the suspected are held, while their fates are determined, and for some it is a final destination, the last place they will ever know. Its very name carries the weight of all these meanings. Princesses themselves have been confined within its walls, held under guard, subjected to watching and questioning. To be imprisoned there is to be stripped of freedom and dignity. placed at the mercy of those who hold power over you, uncertain of what will come. You would be observed constantly, interrogated perhaps, your words and conduct scrutinized for evidence of guilt or innocence. The confinement is not merely physical but psychological, a state of helpless suspense in which your fate rests entirely in other hands, and in which you can do little but wait and wonder. That waiting, that terrible uncertainty, may be the cruelest aspect of all. Confined within the tower, you would be left to wonder what each sound in the corridor might mean, whether the approaching footsteps bring something as ordinary as a meal or something far more dreadful. You would not know from one moment to the next whether release, continued imprisonment, or execution awaited you. To live in such suspense, unable to determine your own fate and uncertain of it at every turn, is a particular kind of torment. The dread stretched out over hours and days with no assurance of how it will end. So this shadow hangs over your life, the knowledge that for all your rank, or perhaps because of it, you might fall so far as to find yourself behind the tower's walls, imprisoned, watched, and waiting on an uncertain and possibly fatal fate. Being royal has not spared you this danger, but has, in its way, brought you within its reach. The threat is real, the precedent established, the possibility never entirely absent from the calculations of your existence. And whether that shadow ever falls upon you or passes you by, your story, however it unfolds, is one whose ending was rarely yours to write. And so we come to the close of your royal life, however it may end, because a princess's story rarely wraps up neatly. Perhaps you grow old, having outlived husbands, rivals, and disappointments, your value long since spent. Perhaps you rise, against all odds, to wear a crown of your own. Or perhaps you simply endure, year after year, as a piece on someone else's board, moved and demoted and restored as politics demand. Whatever your fate, it was seldom yours to choose. From your first breath as the wrong-gendered heir to your last, you belonged not to yourself, but to the dynasty that made you. Let's begin by acknowledging that your story, like the lives of so many in your position, resists a tidy conclusion. The neat resolutions of fiction are rarely granted to a princess, whose fate is bound up with forces too large and too changeable for that. Your ending, whatever it proves to be, is likely to be complicated, shaped by circumstances beyond your control, and unfolding according to logic that has little to do with your own wishes. There is no guarantee of a satisfying close, only the continuation and eventual conclusion of a life lived largely at the direction of others. One possible ending sees you growing old, outliving the husbands, rivals, and disappointments that filled your years. You might survive into age, having watched the drama of your life play out around you, the great matches and rivalries and reversals all receding into the past. But survival into old age brings its own quiet fate, for by then your value, so central to your earlier life, may be long since spent. Having outlasted your usefulness as a bride and a bearer of heirs, you may find yourself diminished in importance, a survivor whose moment has passed. Another possibility, rarer and more dramatic, sees you rise against all odds to wear a crown of your own. Fortune and the deaths of others might elevate you unexpectedly, transforming you from a pawn into a monarch, from a piece on the board into a player commanding it. It would be a startling reversal, an ascent few could predict from the disappointing circumstances of your birth. Such things have happened, the wrong-gendered infant of one era becoming the sovereign of another. It is the most triumphant of the paths your life might take, though even it comes with burdens and dangers of its own. Or perhaps your fate is simply to endure year after year as a piece in games played by others. You might live out your life being moved about the board, elevated and demoted and restored as the shifting demands of politics dictate. never mistress of your own destiny. This is in many ways the most representative of the possible endings, a life of persistence within constraints, of weathering the reversals imposed from above without ever escaping them. You would go on, adapting to each new turn, your circumstances rising and falling while your fundamental lack of control remained constant throughout. What unites all these possible endings is the thread that has run through your entire existence, that your fate was seldom yours to choose. Whether you aged into spent irrelevance, rose improbably to sovereignty, or simply endured as a perpetual instrument of others' designs, the shape of your life was determined largely by forces outside yourself. Your choices, such as they were, played out within narrow bounds set by dynasty, politics, and the will of the powerful. The direction of your life belonged in the end more to your circumstances than to you, and this is the truth that has defined you from the very beginning, that you belonged not to yourself but to the dynasty that made you. From your first breath as the disappointing daughter who should have been a son, to whatever end awaited you, you existed as an asset, an instrument, a piece in the great design of your house. Your value, your marriage, your very identity were shaped by that belonging. It is a heavy truth to rest upon, a life so thoroughly given over to purposes beyond the self. Let me know when you would like the outro, and I will bring the whole thing gently to its close. So there it is. A single life spent as a princess in Tudor England, from the muted applause of your disappointing birth to the uncertain shadows of your final years. You were poured into clothing that held you rigid, painted with cosmetics that quietly poisoned you, and crowned with headdresses heavy enough to ache in your very bones. You ate like royalty, and rotted your teeth for the privilege. You were educated brilliantly and watched relentlessly, surrounded always by companions who were never quite friends, in palaces that were magnificent and freezing all at once. And beneath all the silken gold ran a truth colder than any draughty great hall. You were never truly your own. Your marriage was a treaty, your legitimacy a matter of politics, your reputation a national asset, your body the instrument on which a dynasty pinned its hopes. You could be a princess on Tuesday and a bastard by Friday, elevated and demoted at the stroke of someone else's pen, all while being expected to smile gracefully through every reversal. Yet here is the thing worth remembering as you drift off tonight. Real women lived these lives. They endured the pins and the poison and the endless watching. They waited for strangers, survived the perils of childbed, navigated courts that could turn deadly over a whispered rumour, and some of them, against every odd stacked against them, rose to shape history itself. They were pieces on a board, yes, but they were also stubborn, clever, resilient people who found ways to endure a world that offered them so little control over their own existence. So tonight, as you settle into a bed that is entirely your own, in a room where no one is watching, free to choose your own clothes, your own company and your own future, maybe spare a quiet thought for those long-ago princesses. They wore the crown, the finery and the cage all at once, and they carried it with a grace we can scarcely imagine. History may be gilded and glamorous on the surface, but underneath it is proof of just how much people can bear and still keep going. Rest well. You have earned your comfort, and the great game, for tonight at least, can